Hiya. Now, if you've seen another version of this and it goes all wonky, it's because I screwed up. So this hopefully will be better. Somebody called me in the middle of my diatribe and that threw me off. Anyway, here we are. I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I am now sitting in a different location, as you can see, and it is my workshop, which was built by my daughter. And of course, being built by one's daughter, you have to end up with her way of organizing things, which to an old man is really bad news. But it's good news now because now it's organized and now I'm beginning to understand it. So congratulations to her. She changed the way an old man works. Anyway, water shift reaction. Now, you've got the ketones, and the ketones are coming out and it's all beautiful and da 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 da. Well, you've got to turn the ketones into hydrogen. So there is a particular way of turning hydrocarbons into hydrogen, and that's through a process known as water shift reaction. Sounds terrific. It's not complicated. It's quite easy to understand. But to make it simple, I'm going to work on the principle that you've got methane instead of ketones, but it's essentially the same, except the ketones are rather slightly more complex, and there are more bits and pieces to go in between. So if you want to turn methane into hydrogen, what you do is you add water. Great, huh? H2O, that's water. So what you do is you catalyze the CH4, which is the methane, by using water to produce CO2 and hydrogen. Now, you're going to turn around and say, well, wait a minute, you're creating CO2. No, you're not. The CO2 is actually in the material anyway. It will eventually become CO2. So all you're doing is you're shifting the CO2 from one material to another. The way this works is this. You take water and you turn it into steam. So it's hot, over 400 degrees C. Then you catalyze it using a nickel catalyst in a chamber. And what you get out is you get out hydrogen, H2, and CO2, CO2. The way this happens is this. Water is containing H2 and O2. The CH4 is what it is, carbon and 4 hydrogen atoms, or two molecules of hydrogen. And what you're doing is you're combining the two water atoms, the O2, with the carbon to create CO2. And when you do that, you liberate the hydrogen that's in the water. Now, the way this actually works is one CH4 plus two water, H2O, and you have 2H2 coming out, H4 coming out, and CO2 coming out. Then you have to separate it. And separation is kind of cool. In the old days, it was done by a thing called pressure swing absorption. So in other words, you had an absorbent material, you put them under two different pressures, one that would take the CO2 and another that would take the hydrogen. Or in fact, actually, you just took the CO2 and let the hydrogen boil off. This is very good, but it's a bit kind of pedestrian, should we say. Oak Ridge National Labs in the state of Tennessee, that's where the people vote for Trump. They actually have some smart people there, probably don't vote for Trump. A group of those smart people come from the UK, and they were the carbon people who used to work for British Petroleum. Now, this is a sort of example of how Britain does things and then gives it to the Americans because they're stupid. Not because the Americans are stupid. The Americans are smart enough to understand a good thing when they see it, especially if it's free. No, the British are stupid for allowing it to happen in the first place. So these Brits used to work for BP. BP helped them start an independent company, which they were supposed to fund, but they didn't. Surprise, surprise there. And so all these guys had no better opportunity than to go to Oak Ridge National Labs, who were going to pay them at least. So off they toddled to Oak Ridge National Labs, and they came up with this incredible carbon material, which was a foam. But it was so conductive that you could hold it in your hand, put an ice cube on the top, and feel the ice immediately on the palm of your hand. That's how heat conductive it was. Well, it was also electrically conductive. So the idea was that the way you separated gases is you looked at their valences and whether they would be attracted to a negative pole or a positive pole, and they would put through a, say, negative pole, which would attract the hydrogen, and the CO2 would separate off and fly off in all directions. Then what you would do is you would reverse the polarity, and then the hydrogen would come out. Hey, couldn't be simpler than that, could it? The only problem is making the carbon foam is one of their patents, so nobody can do it. We have to wait until their patents run out. But I should think probably they may have already run out. Anyway, this simple system is just brilliant, and it means that separation of gases is now very, very easy. Now, what do you do with the CO2? Well, you store it. And the good thing about CO2 is you can use it for improving growth in plants, because after all, CO2 is what plants like, because they turn the CO2 into oxygen. And how do they do that? By absorbing the carbon. So in effect, they are a separator themselves. And this is needed because basically plants are hydrocarbons, so they need the carbon. So CO2 can be used to enhance growth. In fact, some really, really progressive and clever farmers put pipes underneath their fields to pump CO2 into the fields, and that CO2 enhances growth of grass in particular. So they get greater yields in order to feed cows, lamb, sheep, and things like that. Now, the CO2 can also be used as a refrigerant, but these are more complex things. So now you have your hydrogen, and that is what you use to power the fuel cells. Is this expensive? No, it's not expensive. It's all part of a system to produce electricity that is ultimately owned by the community. So now we've reduced the cost of waste management, and the cost of the production of electricity is totally localized and can be used by the residents in the households in the community. But there's more to it than that. And that is what I shall be going on in the next session, which is the fuel cell and what that does, because that is where I really have an interest.